Hello, curling fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Broom Brothers, the official podcast of the curling group and the Grand Slam of Curling. John Cullen with you as we narrow in on curling season. We are getting ever closer. The Grand Slam, the AMJ Masters in London, is just weeks away as we record this episode, and it's a big year coming up for the Grand Slams. As we know, it's not just the Grand Slams this year, but also the launch of Rock League. And we've got a lot of exciting changes in format, in rules, things being talked about. And we wanted to let you, the listeners, know about all of those things that are going on. So I'm pleased to be joined by one of the members of the Grand Slam of Curling's Competition Committee, as well as, of course, a commentator for the Grand Slam of Curling and former player. Brent Laing is here. And Brent, this is the first time I feel like I've talked to you not on a microphone while a curling game was happening.
True. Very true. And I try to keep it to that with you, John, but we'll make an exception today.
Yeah, when Brent calls me on the phone, we have to pretend like we're commentating a game in the background, or he gets very uncomfortable. Well, thrilled to have you here, Brent. We're going to dive into everything, but this is the first time I've had you on the show, so I do actually have to run you through the top four before we get into the episode proper. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and I just want you to give me the first answer that pops into your head. Okay?
Okay, that's a lot of pressure, but shoot.
Everyone always says it's a lot of pressure, and I feel like it's not that much pressure at all. But we'll see.
No, the pressure is not to say something stupid that I'll regret.
But I feel like that's a long-standing pressure with you.
True. Very true.
All right, here we go. Who is someone you have never played with before that you would most like to?
Oh, that's a good one. Brad Jacobs.
If you know that both sets of rocks are great, there's no problem with either set. What color are you taking?
Red.
What's your favorite city to play in that's not your hometown?
Ooh. Can I answer twice? I would say sure. Winnipeg's probably the best city in Canada, or one of the best cities in Canada. Let's just stick with Winnipeg.
Okay, nice. I like that's a wife pick right there. That
a little bit of a hometown pick as well. It's not my hometown, but kind of.
Yeah, I like that. And finally, how would your bitterest rival describe you?
I don't know who that is. That might be Jennifer as well. I don't know. I don't know. I can be a bit of a dick, John. People have accused me of that before. So I would say, that's probably pretty accurate.
People call you a dick and you just go, yeah, you know what? Fair enough.
Sometimes it calls for that.
I love it. Now, when we had John Morris on the show, a couple of weeks ago, we were doing the draft for the AMJ Masters, and he was the one who kind of said, John, you got to get Brent on the show, get him to talk about the competition committee, some of the format changes we're discussing for the new season. For fans and listeners of this show who maybe didn't listen to the John episode, or maybe they did, but they've forgotten already, let's just start with a broad overview. Can you just talk me through what the competition committee is, who's on it, why does it exist? Because, I'm sure there are some fans who hear competition committee and they have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I think a lot of that responsibility is, it used to fall to a couple of people, and, they kind of did everything. And that's, Jenny Cram and Christy did so much of this stuff. And I think for a long time they were asking for help. And then finally there was like an official, Nick's got all these ideas and the curling group have all these ideas. What's the avenue for, where does it have to go through before it gets to, if it was, Nick would already have no blanks, right? If it didn't have to go through anybody yet. And so it was kind of put together by the curling group. And it all starts with, most of what we'll talk about today is the why. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? And we want to do a whole bunch of things with the slams in terms of making them the best. They're already the best events, but why haven't they really progressed maybe more quickly? Maybe there's some competition stuff that, formats and those types of things that we could tweak and try to make those things better. And we've got a good group put together. Johnny Moe, as he said, I love how he does the draft. That's the softball questions. And he's like, you should talk to Langer about the hard stuff. And then
maybe it's that whole like dick thing coming back here. He's like, Langer can handle it. No problem.
Yeah, for sure. I get all the fun stuff, which is totally cool, but it's been awesome to be involved. And Pierre Shred is on it. I mean, I don't know. Well, I know that there's nobody that's been around more Grand Slam games over the years. I don't know if he's ever missed a draw, to be honest. When he played, he used to come and watch, and he's at almost every draw all year round. So a wealth of knowledge there. And then Jennifer Jones is on there. And then we have a couple people sit in from the curling group, but it's essentially that's the four, I think. I hope I didn't miss anybody. And yeah, our mandate is just to take any ideas from anywhere, whether those come from the curling group, fans, players, and just really have a hard look at our formats and figure out, are there things that we could improve or things that we could try that will end up in making improvements. We're not going to do anything that, that we think is going to make things worse, as much as people may accuse us of that. We're not trying to ruin curling. We're trying to make it maybe appeal to a wider audience. One of the big things is in all the research and talking with sponsors and networks and stuff, a lot of stakeholders want the game to be faster, into a smaller window, maybe not even faster. Maybe we need fewer ends, which isn't super popular. Maybe we need timed ends, shot clocks. I mean, nothing's off the table. So yeah, that's kind of the basis of it, is get a group of people who have some background in the game, but we do have a foundation of, and I think when you and I talked the other day, there's a book my old coach recommended. It's Does It Make the Boat Go Faster? Is essentially, will it make the boat go faster? Essentially a rowing team in Britain for 4 years preparing for the Olympics. Every question that, before they said yes or no, they asked themselves, will it make the boat go faster? And if it's yes, they did it. And if it was no, they won't. And that's kind of where we're at with curling. If there's an idea and we say, would this make it more interesting? Would it help make it faster? Would it draw a new crowd? Would it, make it more entertaining? Then we'll entertain it and talk about it. Not saying we'll implement it, but that's really the basis of it.
So you're saying this competition committee, sounds like it sort of formed a little bit organically, that when the curling group took over, as you said, obviously a fresh set of eyes and sets of eyes that really, are not curlers or curling fans, or they're new curling fans, right? We talk about Nick in particular. He'll be the first to admit he only really got involved in curling in the last 5 years or so. So is that kind of how it came to be, that it was sort of, we need a place for all of these ideas to go?
I think so. And more in the past, and one of the complaints from the players' side was always, who makes these decisions, and why aren't we included, or why isn't there a process or a board or a committee of some sort? The same thing with the players committee, players association, which we still don't have. I say I'm no longer a player, but it's still a sore spot. And that just falls right back to the players. I mean, we've complained a lot over the years, but have never really been able to organize. But you got to give a guy like Matt Dunstone credit, puts in a lot of time and effort on the players council. So things have come together. And I know John and Matt talk a lot, and they kind of represent our two groups in terms of, what do you think of this? Is this an absolute no? And those conversations have happened both ways, where, Dunny's like, no, that can't happen. And we're like, okay, well, if the players are totally offside, then probably it's not something we're going to push through.
Right. Now, we're going to get into sort of the nuts and bolts of some of the changes, and you've kind of mentioned a little bit about this already, but pardon me, I thought one thing you brought up, I think curling fans will listen to this and they'll say, well, why change it? I love it. I personally love it. So why would we change anything? The game of curling is perfect. Why change it? And so I just think, as I said, before we get into the nitty gritty, give me the sort of like just big picture overview. Like, why are we even considering changes to the game? You've mentioned a little bit about networks, sponsors. Can you dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm old enough now, John, and fortunate enough to have, good skips over the years that I started playing these slams in the early 2000s. And I said earlier, they're the best events in the world. It's the best on best. The only place we get that guaranteed, they've been, people circle those on the calendar. That's the first events you put into your calendar as a top player. If you're in them, you build your schedule around that. But having said that, if you looked at 2005 and then you looked at 2015 and now you look at an event in 2025, other than, maybe the people have changed. I mean, Gushu's in all those, and maybe Kui or some Ben and Mark, but a lot of the players have changed. But if you didn't know based on the timeline, you would say these aren't really any different. And if you didn't know based on, I don't know, but we don't need to go down the finance road here, but inflation's changed, but the prize money hasn't changed much. I mean, recently it's gotten better, don't get me wrong, but we've kind of been spinning our wheels. And I think we'll agree. I love curling. There's lots that doesn't need to change, But if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to keep getting what we've always got. And I don't think that's good enough. And that's why somebody with Nick and his team and Cotton and Cook and all those guys, they looked at it and they were like, what are we missing here? How come this sport isn't way bigger, way more marketable? Why aren't there superstars? Why aren't there pros? And we've been asking those questions for years. I don't have any of the answers, but I can tell you, Nick and the curling group, they do, and they're going to ruffle some feathers. But that's really the why is, if we can keep going the way we are, and the Olympics is great, but we're losing a lot of great players. We're losing that youth group from juniors to universities and college. As those programs are getting better and better, we're getting almost worse and worse at getting those players from that level into the World Curling Tour and the Grand Slams. And part of that is because they don't have there's no carrot at the end. And the number with Rock League, not to get too far off topic, but the number of emails that have come in saying, thank you so much, from young players. Now I have something to shoot for. Now I can keep chasing this. I don't have to quit, because there's nowhere to go. And it's really hard now to be at the top level. It's impossible almost to be at the top level and have a regular job. So I think the why is because curling deserves more, because curling can be so much bigger around the world, especially. We can pretend like Canada owns curling, and we'll always pretend we do. But if it's going to grow, it has to grow in the US and it has to grow internationally. And there's all of this demand for it. We just haven't ever presented it properly.
Yeah. And I love what you said there about the youth, because I think, you and I have talked about this off air, but, when you and I were coming up, and you're a little older than me, but similar kind of generation as far as it went, you would feel like if you were a really good junior player, it was reasonable that you were competitive at the men's or women's level within, let's say, 5 years, and maybe sooner if you were really good or you got lucky and you got picked up by a top skip. But you kind of had avenues, right? It was like if you were a really good junior team, you could get good enough to be competitive in men's within 5 years or so. Or, we definitely had almost like a farm system where older skips were bringing up younger players all the time. Obviously, you had that with Glenn Howard. The Kevin Martin program out west is very well established. And I think now we're looking at, if you're a really, really good junior player, a Canadian champion level junior player, you're looking at more like a decade. Like if you stay with your junior team, you're not going to beat Bruce Mowat until you're 28 years old. And the top teams are not really picking up younger players anymore because the Olympics is just too much. So yeah, I love what you were saying there about, we have to do things to make sure that these players don't just get out of juniors and then stare at the abyss for however many years.
Yeah. And that's a big part of the U15 Grand Slam event. How cool is that? And the U25 and the two of the tier twos, they're trying to create a bridge and create a whole ecosystem of promoting the game, but also promoting the players and having an avenue of where to go. And that comes down to some of the formats and some of the things that we talk about. And even I know there was some social media stuff about how we choose teams, sponsors, exemptions, and things like that. And it's the same decision-making process. Does it check the boxes we're trying to accomplish? And one of those is really promote the 15 to 25-year-old players. And, you see the university teams coming to the One Slam, and, not everybody was happy with that. And that's, if you're going to make decisions, you're going to piss people off. And that's just the nature of the game. But so it's exciting to see that finally somebody's saying, here's the challenges with the game, here's the problems, but here's our solutions. Because in the past, we could list off all the problems for days. We're really good at that as curlers. Yes. And then it would be like, well, what are we going to do about it? It's like, well, I'm at the top now. So, and curlers, especially Canadian curlers, self-serving till we die. Like we could tattoo that on our backs. Yeah. Because it was until it affected me, and I'm saying me as a group, I don't really care. But then once it affects you, it's like, whoa, now I've got a problem. So now there's a body in there and a group with vision and, financing too, right? They've raised some serious cash, and with some people who see the opportunity, who have done things like this before. And for the first time ever, people are doing what they said they were going to do, and everything has gone better than they promised so far.
Yeah.
Will it keep going? I think it will. I can't promise you that, but they've done everything they said so far.
So far, so good. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're right. The curling has had a problem with people getting their piece of the pie and then desperately hanging on to their piece of the pie without realizing that there are things they could do to make the pie bigger, and then therefore their small piece of the pie would get much bigger. But that's a topic for another time. You brought this up earlier because I want to get into the rule changes and some of the format changes. One thing that I think has come up quite a bit. I mean, World Curling a couple years ago even tried to do some of this stuff in some of their events. And we've heard it so many times over the years. One of the common things that comes up, as you said, we have a lot of problems and not a lot of solutions, is the game needs to be shorter. And like you said, it's more of a time window thing. It's not necessarily that the game itself needs to be shorter, but talk to me about that. How is the competition committee going about the game being shorter? And also, why does the game need to be shorter, I guess? Because I think there are some fans who, again, would say, I'm totally happy investing 2.5 hours in a Grand Slam of curling game. Why does it need to be shorter, and how are we looking at making it shorter?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is because networks who we want to, to broadcast our game, to promote it, especially internationally, say your broadcast is too long. We don't have those types of, I mean, you're not NFL football. You're trying to break in, so you don't come in and get to have a 3-hour, 4-hour broadcast. So that's definitely part of it. The other part of it is, as the world changes, and this is, again, Nick and his team's area of expertise. I'm an expert in almost nothing. But, you look at the traditional curling game, the traditional fan, and you look at where the world's going now. And even I'm at the point where if it's a 3-minute clip, I'm like, that's too long. I don't even want to watch that. I don't have that kind of time to invest. But you want a new curling fan to come to a game and invest 2.5 or 3 hours into something they don't even know, and something that traditionally, being in the venue, hasn't been all that exciting. Unless, Stu Brown's their commentator, doing the in-venue at the certain places over the years. But so that's another reason, is making it more accessible to more people without it being a huge time commitment, even from a financial. And let's also be real, like, this is a business now, right? These are people coming in that they see an opportunity, and they've invested time and energy and money, and they want to make a return on their investment. So even cost wise, our events are getting longer and longer, which venues are more expensive that way, and all these different things that go into making these types of decisions. But I think overall, shorter is it's really network driven at this point. I don't think, and the players, do they care? To an extent, and I mentioned, the different ways to tackle it. So we already went to 8 ends. I prefer the 8 end game to 10. I've got no problem watching a 10 end game either. I do think that players, and it's easy to say all this from the broadcast booth now, John, like, it doesn't affect me at all. And the team that I kind of consult and do a little coaching with, McEwen, might hate me, but I think they have way too much time. Watching from the broadcast booth and coaching the last couple of years, it was so obvious of all the time we waste out there that you don't really necessarily notice. Mm-hmm. And if you pick up 30 seconds an end on either side, a minute an end, that's 15 minutes off, 16 minutes off the broadcast. And that gets you down closer to that 2-hour window. So we don't want to fundamentally change the game. But at the same time, if a big change made it super appealing to a network or to a sponsor or to a new demographic of some sort of fan, then we'd be silly not to look at it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think your point is well made about the slams in particular, right? Because I think, you obviously very high level mixed doubles player. One of the main things you hear about mixed doubles is the time crunch. It's fast. And when you're playing it, you don't get a ton of time to make decisions. And we also heard similar things this year, now that the 10 end thinking time has also shrunk at the Briar Scotties Worlds level. I do think we are getting to a point where we're hearing that, but we almost never hear that about the slams. You almost never hear a player go, geez, they don't give us enough time out there. There's a lot. And the teams that do play fast, the Rachel Homans and the Brad Gujus of the world, they're frequently ending games with 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes on their time clock. So when you're talking about making games shorter, you're thinking right away we could just start with the time clocks and just giving teams less thinking time.
Yeah, just kind of peel the Band-Aid off slowly and just take a minute away a year over the next couple of years or something. But yeah, that's one of the things, because they do have, I think at the Briar, don't quote me necessarily, but it's like 3 minutes and 20 seconds an end. And then you get to the slams and it's 33 minutes for 8 ends and a timeout. So that's a lot of time. And then the teams who use it all, and I've played on those teams, and no offense to, if you're going to give me the time, certain people are going to use it. They're always going to be tight on time. It doesn't matter if it's 40 minutes or 30 minutes, they're going to be tight on time. And from a fan and from a broadcaster's view, sometimes time crunch, you make bad decisions, and then mistakes are interesting, right? It's getting to the point where the players are too good, and not that that's not our mandate to try and make it harder for them to be that good. But there is a bit of an upside there potentially that, the stress it's entertaining, it's appealing, it's intriguing from a fan's perspective that, look at, he's freaking out running down the ice here. Is he going to make it? And we can have the time clock on the TV. And that's not what we're after, but that might be a byproduct.
It doesn't hurt. It might be a fun consequence. That's right, for sure. Now, one thing that has come up when we do talk about fitting into windows, and this is something that has been tried a couple times before, but are we also talking no extra ends? Because, when you talk about a window, if you want to hit that window, an extra end kind of screws all that. So is that something that's being looked at as well?
Yeah, and I can't let the whole cat out of the bag, but that's probably going to happen pretty early on this year, where we're going to have a format that has no extra ends, just because of that window and trying to fit it in there. And maybe you go to like almost like the NHL and a lot of the other pro sports, 3 for a win, 2 for an overtime win, 1 for an overtime loss, and it becomes a shootout, a draw to the button. And is that exciting to watch? Well, again, I don't have to throw it or sweep it. So yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
And maybe we're wrong and we'll try it. It's like, no, that didn't work. And we'll be the first to say that was wrong. We screwed up. That made it worse, not better. And that goes in the garbage. So that's definitely part of it. Tiebreakers, I mean, that's been a popular thing over the years. We would love to find a format that doesn't require tiebreakers. And when I say require, I mean, if we didn't play each other, John, and we have the same record, we don't want a format where you can get in and I'm out based on something else, based on a run back competition or a coin flip or last stone draw or whatever it is. We'd rather come up with a format that, that if you win this game, you go forward, and at some point you lose a game and you go home, rather than you win your last game and then you're looking around, you're adding up all these numbers, and the fans are like, I have no idea who's in, who's out, what's happening. So there are some formats that I think we're going to try, maybe even in the second slam, where it's different. There's still some pools because, again, the powers that be have decided that the matchups are important, that they want to promote home and Anderson on Thursday night, or, Mowat White on Wednesday night, or whatever those big matchups are. But then how do we get that to a place where it doesn't require tiebreakers on Saturday morning, and we're not sending home teams without having played for their life? And I think it's going to open some eyes, and there's going to be a lot of feedback, positive and negative, probably mostly negative in the beginning. But that's the whole idea. And then you can plan out your off-ice stuff and your scheduling, and the TV and everything can plan better, the entertainment, because it's supposed to be fun, right? You go to a Blue Jays game, not because it's way better to watch on TV. Almost any sport is better to watch on TV, except for the in-venue experience and the feeling of being there with the people and cheering for your team and all that other great stuff that goes on. So the curling group really is focused on, Grand Slam of karaoke. If half the teams or 6 of the teams are in tiebreakers that next morning, they're not coming to sing karaoke, and we're not going to know till 9:30 that night. And all of a sudden, half your karaoke people are out, and it's not that it's a karaoke company, but that was pretty wildly successful, and the fans love it. And so that it helps with scheduling, those types of things. It helps with the streaming. It just helps with a number of different things in terms of no tiebreakers. So if anybody has I don't pretend to be a format guru. I think, and I can say Pierre came up with a pretty cool format for this first one in terms of the crossover. At least it's based on what you've done this week and you reseed. I don't even hate the idea of playing a 3-game round robin, and that seeds you 1 to 16. And then we have a Sweet 16 draw where it's single elimination, right? Like there's nothing off the table. It's a pro sport. It's a business now. So yes, fair comes into it, but none of the pro leagues are fair. The NHL is not fair. It depends what division you're in. The Major League Baseball is not fair. The National League is way better than the American League, and they don't play everybody the same number of games. It's about marketing. It's about selling the sport, and it's about growing the sport around the world. So if the answer is it will help us do that, or it might help us do that, you're probably going to see some. And, there's not a ton of points on the line this year. So it's a good year to there's tons of points, but not where are they going, right? Internationally, they're important.
Right.
Canada, they're still important, but it's not leading to the Olympics. You're either already in or out of the Olympics, and that's the big carrot. So it's a good year to try some stuff, especially leading into Rock League, because when Johnny Moe and Jen unveil their formats and the things that are coming there, it's not something that we've really seen before.
Well, I was gonna mention that earlier. You know, one thing that you had kind of said to me when I did the pre-interview with you last week that I thought was sort of striking was you had kind of mentioned that the Grand Slams might end up being sort of a training ground for Rock League. That in some ways, you know, Rock League might become not necessarily more of the focus. I mean, obviously the Grand Slam tournaments are always going to be huge for players and for fans, but you know, that the idea that we could be using the Grand Slams to drill down on things that we want to do for Rock League. Am I fair in saying that?
I think so. But I also would say, John, that historically we've used the Grand Slams to drill down on formats and rules and thinking time, like all those things. A lot of, I wouldn't say all of the great things, changes of our game over the last 10 to 20 years, most of them were tried out at the Slams. And I think you'll continue to see that. Hopefully it doesn't, you know, rub too many people the wrong way. But I also hope that most of the traditional curling fans are like you and I, like we'd really have to screw this up for you to stop watching curling, right, John?
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
So we've got some room to make some mistakes, and we know we're going to make some. I mean, we know we're going to try some stuff that's not going to work, but it's not going to be for lack of effort or lack of discussion or, you know, or lack of direction. It's going to be, the decisions are going to be made with, you know, with the right intentions of making the game better. But yeah, I think you are, like, even the no extra end. I would be shocked if there's extra ends in Rock League. I don't think I'm speaking out of school there. I just don't think it's going to be a thing. So it needs to be tried somewhere. Yeah. We have an opportunity to maybe do that at the Slams, and not totally. Like, the best teams are still going to win. I don't think there's a format where Mowat's not the best curler in the world.
Yeah.
I can't think of one. Unless it's left-handed, like, you got to play with your other hand. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do no sweeping, other than if you both cover the pin on your draw to the button to win the game, I guess. Then it's going to be no sweeping, but that'd be pretty cool. And that's really going to separate the best players.
Yeah.
So the best players are still going to be the best players. The best teams are still going to win most of the stuff, but we hope we can attract some new fans, encourage the younger players to keep at it, and see that Rock League as a chance to, you know, maybe I can make a career out of curling, at least for 10 years, 8 years. Maybe I can make some money, because that hasn't really been a thing up until now.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, you're absolutely right. I think that, you know, people will listen to this podcast, and as we get into the year and they see some of the rule changes that happen, as you said, there's going to be some initial negative feelings. But I think your point is well made. What people miss is the Slams have been doing this forever. And I would love for you to speak from a player perspective. I mean, you know, you've played in more Slams than almost anyone. When that happened back when you were a player, was that something that you were receptive to, just knowing that it was for the betterment of the game? Because my limited experience, I actually played the one tier 2 I played in was one of the first events with the 5-rock rule. And I remember, even as a player who's worked their way into the Slam picture, into the tier 2, we just thought, oh, that's exciting. That's something new we get to try. Was that true of you when you were playing as well?
I think so. I think in general, as a group, I think we were proud of it, that we knew we were doing things that maybe some other bodies, organizations couldn't do or wouldn't do, and that we were willing to try some different things to try and take curling to places it hadn't been before and make it a more entertaining. It was all about, at that time, will it make it more entertaining? We don't want rocks running up and down. You know, Glenn and Russ, when they invented the free guard zone, is because, you know, Glenn would always get up 2 points on Russ and peel him out in practice, and Russ got frustrated and created a rule, I think is what actually happened. But yeah, when the 5-rock came in, you know, thinking time made a lot of sense. You don't want to penalize teams that throw a lot of draws. We used to time the rock all the way down the ice. Well, that doesn't make any sense now, right? When you look back. Yeah. And that was changed at the Slams. And, you know, I'll throw Mike and the boys under the bus. Team McEwen at the time, they were adamant, 5-rock rule, no way. This is too much. This is not our strength, that we don't want to do this. And then they come and they win the event, the first 5-rock event, which was, where's the justice? They should have went bang, bang, bang for all the whining they did. But I think that the slam players in general wore it as a badge of honor that we're willing to do anything that we as a collective group, and that Sportsnet and the powers that be, the board, whatever they thought was going to make the game better, more marketable, more exciting, just a better product for fans, a better fan experience. If you told the players now that we're going to rip rock music in there, but it's going to fill the stadiums and we're going to double the amount of events, there'd still be people that complain. The older guys in their 40s, we already can't hear those, so I don't know what we'd be complaining about. But if you tell the players, as long as you kind of lay out a plan of here's what we're trying to do and here's what we think it will do, the players are really supportive.
Has that been your experience now that you're on the other side with the competition committee? You said, obviously you talk with Matt Dunstone a lot. I know you talk to a ton of the players. Has that been the initial message so far, as we've already seen a little bit of experimentation with format? Obviously, we're going to see more this year. Has it been, generally speaking, positive feedback from the players about, some of the things that might be coming?
Yeah, it definitely has. And I think Nick set that up really well when they came in, they were saying to the players, here's what we want to do. Here's what's underserved. We're going to rock the boat, right? We're going to flip some things upside down, but you got to know that it's for the right reasons. And we're trying to, create a better game. And I haven't, the new format that went out to the players that are in the first slam got a lot of positive feedback, and it's not a traditional format, not one we've tried specifically before. There's always going to be, some complaints. I know there was a little bit of complaining on social media about the sponsors exemptions and those types of things. But for the vast majority, and the players are honest, but they're also very supportive. They know what the curling group is trying to accomplish. And I think that's enough for them. And they know that they have a voice. That's all we ever really wanted. It wasn't like, no, we're not doing that. And I don't have a reason why we're not doing it, but we're not doing it. Or yes, we're doing this. And I can't tell you why, but we're doing it. That never felt good. And that's never the case with the slams in general. That's not what they were built on. And it's not how the curling group operates.
Fair. I just have a couple more. You had talked about, we've obviously discussed some of the things, maybe extra ends go away, maybe tiebreakers go away. You had brought up one format where maybe we have a shorter version of pool play, and then that seeds everybody for a single elimination tournament. Another one that you had kind of brought up, and when I talked to you last week, that I thought was also interesting, because we're getting to a point now where, sports gambling is a huge thing, and we are entering an era where, we have a unique sport in that you can quit at any time. And as people who gamble know, there are a lot of some of the most popular bets are over-under bets, where you're betting on the total score, either combined teams or one team or the other team. And when you give up early, you kind of send those numbers into a tailspin. So tell me a little bit about that. Are there plans to eliminate conceding games? And also, are we looking at a potential format where points for and against start to matter? So then you're kind of getting teams playing those full 8 ends regardless, because they need the extra points at the end of the week.
Yeah, and I know we're just recording this, but I already see that the chat's just fired up on this one.
Well, we got to get it. We got to get them going on something here.
Yeah. No, betting's going to be a big part of it. And I know that there's some pushback from some curling fans. And but what I would say to them is then don't bet on curling. It's fine. You don't have to bet on it. Sure. But I know that personally, watching other sports, I'm not a big football guy, or, I don't follow a ton of other sports really closely until the Jays are good. So I'm following them now. But if you're out with some friends or whatever, you're going to a game and you got a pro line or a parlay or some kind of bet, it just makes it more fun. It makes it more entertaining. So yeah, betting is coming. It's a big part of the business plan. We know there's a lot of money in betting. I don't have to be a genius to know that. And there's lots of big sponsorship and all sorts of things that it brings with it. So one of our challenges with our sport is, we can quit at any time. So, you and I are playing and you're beating me 8-1 and I've got, 10.5 is the over, and you quit, or I quit after 5. And it's like, oh dude, you just blew my $180 ticket. So and then, so the follow-up is, well, how do you get people to care? Okay, fine, we'll quit. We're just going to throw them through the rings or whatever. And Nick says, well, you just make points for and points against as the tiebreaker that week. Or, that becomes something that's of value. Or, there's a bonus to the team at the end of the week. Nick loves bonuses. If we're going to pay the Grand Slam of Karaoke winner, how about we're going to pay the team that scores the most points or gives up, whatever, the greatest point differential of the week. They're going to get a badge or something and a cash prize, right? And that could be kind of cool. And anything that promotes offense. I've never heard anybody say, I shouldn't say never. Most people won't say, I watch curling for the defense, for the peels, the big weight shots, sure. But you don't watch it to see the seconds blow up the guards and then open hit for 5 or 6 rocks and then a wide open peel. Nobody watches for that. It's interesting strategically, sure, that kind of stuff. But so with the betting, if you can't quit and there's a points differential, that's not locked in anywhere yet. I'd be surprised if you never see it anywhere this year on the curling ice. How that's going to work, I don't know, but it's definitely a part of it. And that's why, you want to bring that money into the game. And that's going to bring in that younger demographic. They tend to like to bet on sports. So if they like to bet on sports, shouldn't we let them bet on our sport? We got you could bet on every shot in curling.
Yeah.
There's time.
Yeah.
This is John's out turn is this percentage. And okay, then I bet he's going to miss. He's an intern player. You could bet on almost anything in curling. There could be nonstop action.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I think, I just wanted to give fans a scope of really what we're talking about here. There's lots and lots to talk about. Are we ever talking about changing the number of ends as well? We're talking about, maybe shortening the game. Right now, we've been at 8. Pretty much in curling, it's always been an even number. I believe it started at 14, then we worked our way down to 12, then to 10. Now we're at 8. Is there would we ever go 7? Would we go 6? Is there a world where we're really actually shortening the length of the game too?
It hasn't been something that's been talked about seriously, but it's been something that's been mentioned. Why is curling an even numbered game? I think the idea maybe was that then it's, even number of hammers, but that never really works out with blank ends. And
definitely not.
So if there was a ton of pushback from players or whoever about getting it to a 2-hour window by shortening the time, then the conversation would probably get a little bit more serious about, well, then we got to go to 7 ends. We had the Everest Curling Challenge or the Everest North American Curling Challenge that was down in Colorado that was on, I believe it was on CBS. They said 2 hours, we're chopping it at 2 hours. So we were like, how do we make sure we cut it to 7 ends? And you know what? It wasn't a big deal at all. I mean, I know it was just 2 games, a men's game and a ladies game. And I know it wasn't, Gushu playing Mowat or, Tiranzoni playing Homan or something, but the game still worked. The better team still won, and we got it into a 2-hour window. So would you rather not be on ESPN and play 8 ends, or do you want to play 7 ends and be on ESPN?
Yeah.
I don't know.
When you put it in that perspective, I think, that answers a lot of questions. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want to get out there for the fans, or are we good?
Yeah, no, I think we covered it all. I would encourage fans and, anybody that follows curling, don't be afraid to get out there and suggest some things. We might not see them all, but I can tell you that somebody like Jess Sabo, she's got alerts on everything. If it says curling in it, she knows what it's saying. So, and I can't promise you we'll get it implemented, but we're looking for input. We're looking for ideas. We're not going to hold a town hall necessarily, but we might, who knows? So yeah, curling is in the best place it's been, in my experience, since the Grand Slam started. That was a big turning point for curling, and almost everything great that's happened in the game outside of the Olympics. I don't know the backstory of that, but maybe the slams helped get it into the Olympics as well, because it increased exposure of the game. But I've never been involved at a time when there's so many cool things going on. When we've got so much time and energy and money for the first time in ever, we have a lot of money behind the game. Do we want more? Of course, but they're in their second fundraise, and they're going to get that done as well. And this Rock League is going to be launching and around the world. And so if I was a young curler right now, I'd be pretty damn excited about the opportunities coming my way if I do all the things I'm supposed to do, which is, it's pretty self-explanatory. Get so good you're undeniable, and be like Ben Hebert and make it so that you've got so many good connections and you're a good player and you bring some other things to the table. And then you'll never be denied. You'll never be ignored.
I love it. As you said, very exciting time for the game. Thrilled to have you here. Thanks so much, Brent, for joining us. And thanks to you for listening. Speaking of exciting things, we are now on the Broom Brothers officially switching to a weekly format now that the curling season is started. So it'll be the same as last year. Robbie's going to be coming back. He had a kid this summer, and he's living that 2-kid life. So he's coming back. Robbie will be back on the show. We'll still have all the interviews with players and other important voices in the sport. That's all going to keep happening throughout the season. So make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button if you're on YouTube. You can watch this episode in video and all of our episodes in video on YouTube. You can find us on social media. We're on basically everything at the Broom Brothers, but definitely looking forward to an exciting curling year ahead. Hope you'll stick with us for all of it. Thanks again to you for listening. Thanks again to Brent for joining us, and we will see you back here next week. Goodbye.